we have terrible internet here. I was just about to say, if you have issues hearing or seeing, then just wait and watch the replay, because sometimes a group Facebook Live has so many people and so many devices on it that we're sharing some of the same data signals, and so it breaks up and is really bad. So if you have trouble watching, just either hang tight, check devices in your house, make sure nothing else is connected to your internet, but just know that Facebook Live is not an ideal way to watch and do these videos, but it's the only way we can do them here from my neighborhood. We don't have good internet. So I apologize for losing y'all a while ago. Hopefully this will work better. So anyway, today's tutorial is about cleaning your machine and troubleshooting your machine or your projects. So we're going to first start with some tools, some basic information, and then we're going to go into cleaning my machine. Do keep in mind that my machine is not the same as the 770. I did have a 770 for several years, but my NQ 1400E is very similar to the 770, the 780, and the 800. So structurally they're almost identical, but you may notice a few little things here and there that aren't quite like your machine. Now, all that said, if you have a completely different machine, if you have a Viking or Redline, which Redline is a multi-needle, it's going to be way different. But almost all the single needle machines have similar structure and function. So you probably can do similar types of cleaning with your machine, even if you have a different brand. First disclaimer is always check your manual. That's what it's for. Most of the Brother PE manuals do say never oil a machine. We're going to talk about when and how to oil. Anyway, the other disclaimer is that if your machine is still under warranty, don't do any of the stuff we're going to show you without asking us, or I will tell you what you can do and then what you shouldn't do if it's under warranty. If it's under warranty, you should use your warranty no matter what, because that's why they sell you the machine with the warranty. But I will tell you that about 90% of the problems with the 770 or similar machines is just learning to use the machine. It's user error. So that said, let's get this picture off of me. Turn the screen around and talk about some supplies. So when you got your machine, if you bought it new, you got one of these little pouches, and it has all kinds of little goodies down inside there. I've taken out the first 2 or 3 things here out of there to make it convenient for our video. So you have a brush, and this is designed to help clean down in your bobbin case little dust things from all over the top of your machine or wherever. We're going to use this when we clean in just a minute. You're going to have a couple of different screwdrivers depending on the brand machine you got. Notice one is really tiny and one is much bigger and thicker. The thicker one is helpful for changing your needles right here. In some machines you'll wind up with something as big as this, and it also works for changing the needles. It gives you a little more torque on that. This is a screwdriver as well. It just looks different, and sometimes you'll have a little round device with a hole in the middle with a it's about the size of a quarter, and it'll have a little straight edge, sort of like this, that comes off the side, that end right there. And so these kinds of screwdrivers, or even a quarter, are helpful at removing your metal needle plate, which we're going to do in just a minute. So I have also one of these. I think this set of tweezers, see how it's bent, came with my serger, and it's for helping to thread my serger. But I find that sometimes cleaning with my embroidery machine, this kind of tweezer is very helpful. I also have a longer set, and you can order these online. This is a much longer. I'm going to show you the difference. See how much longer this set of tweezers is? So when you can't reach some places like behind your thread cover, we're going to take that off in a minute. Sometimes this longer set of tweezers can reach back in there. I also have a pair of hemostats that I sometimes use to pull. It's like tweezers, but it locks. So if you're a nurse or in the medical profession, you're probably aware of hemostats, but they come in various sizes as well, and I just forgot to dig it out. I use it often. I also have an X-Acto knife or scalpel. In my world, scalpels are easy to come by. And so it's a very sharp blade. But if you have threads stuck back in here that you can't reach, sometimes you can use your blade to slice some of those threads off and then use your tweezers to pull them out. You do want to be very careful with an X-Acto knife or blade. They do cut skin rather easily. We're going to put that way over there out of the way. This is out of my husband's toolbox. It is a tinier Phillips head screwdriver. See if I can focus on that point there. See, it's got the different kind of tip that has the 4 points. And so this kind of screwdriver is really good at removing the screws to remove your covers, okay? Because it's a Phillips head and it's really small. I keep this one here in my sewing desk. This is a needle envelope, but we're going to use it to clean our bobbin in just a little bit, okay? So if you have questions about any of the supplies that you have or you use or you need, just let us know. I'm going to set the camera up here where I can, oops, it says I can't turn it. Okay, so hang on. Let me get my, whoops, camera situated where y'all can see. All right, just a little bit. And my little prop isn't wanting to prop like it did a while ago. Hang on. All right, that's a little better. Let's turn you back around where y'all can see. Okay, let's move this up. Y'all are way too far away from my machine. I gotta get y'all closer. I had this set up to do sideways, and now Facebook says it doesn't want to do it, even after my test did it right. So I apologize for that. Okay, that's better. All right. So first of all, what you're seeing is the end of my machine. This is the nose cover or end cover. And we're first gonna start with removing covers and doing a basic cleaning. The first rule of troubleshooting is always clean your machine first. If you're having shredded threads, if you're having any kind of issues, always stop, remove your hoop from the machine, and go through a thorough cleaning. 90% of the problems can be cured when you have a really clean machine. Dust bunnies are not allowed, okay? Dust bunnies will get in the way of the thread catching inside the mechanism down in your bobbin case, okay? So always, 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 first step to troubleshooting is to clean your machine. And so that's why we're going to go through a thorough cleaning at the very beginning. And then we're going to talk about some different things to troubleshoot after this. So I've already taken my screws out, but this top cover right here, let me turn this around a little bit for y'all. This cover at 1-2 comes off with one screw right here. And then you just lift up and pop it. If it doesn't pop, you're not going to get it out. And it takes a good bit of force to pop that out. So then you just take that off and you'll be able to see some of the tension mechanisms up in here and the thread guides. I have threaded 2 colors of thread to kind of help you see the contrast as we work. Can you see the red and the yellow as I move through there? Okay. Then the end cover on the 770, the 780, and the 800 have 2 screws. One is on the side and one is on the back here. So I have already taken most of mine off. And so now you can see the 2 colors of thread that are wound through the machine. Okay. So once you get the covers off, you can look back in here. Sometimes thread will get caught. Let me find a pointer here. Thread will get caught sometimes back in this little mechanism and will wreak havoc with your stitch outs. So it's important that you be able to take off your covers. Taking these covers off does not void any warranty with any machine that I'm aware of. Once you get into some of these other parts, yes, it can void some of your warranty, but removing these 2 covers does not impact your warranty. It is just part of normal cleaning and maintenance on your machine. And if you take your machine in and there's problems back in here that you could have fixed, sometimes that won't fall under warranty. It's kind of like your car warranty. Only certain things are covered. So do learn to take your covers off and to do regular maintenance and cleaning by yourself, okay? So we've got these 2 covers off. Next, we're going to remove our plastic and needle plate covers. You can remove these 2 separate or as one unit. They just snap right off. The 770 and the 780, the 800 will actually allow you to use your push button icons here, your tools here, with this plastic part off, but my NQ 1400E will not allow that. It's a safety feature. And so I normally on my 770, when I was cleaning this part of my machine, once I got these needle plates off, I always wanted to clean my cutter. Well, the cutter on this machine acted up just a few months after I got it, and I was in the middle of Christmas sewing, and so I just completely removed my cutter. So I don't even have a cutter on this machine that works. It's completely uninstalled. It's in my drawer under my desk. So I can't show you how I clean that, but there's a brush right here on your cutter bar on your machine. If you want to tear your machine apart while we're doing this and do it with us, that's great. But there's a little brush that looks very similar to this brush on the bobbin case. And that brush is responsible for cleaning your cutter as it comes out to slice your thread. If your cutter threads, if your cutter comes out, cuts threads and pulls threads back into that brush, that buildup can cause lots of trouble with your thread cutting and eventually with your stitching. So you want to make sure that the brush between the brush and the cutter are all cleaned regularly. I usually take this little brush, this sharp pointed end, and I just kind of run it along that brush just like that to clean that out. You can use the soft bristle end as well, but you want to keep that cutter clean. A lot of times the cutter will get stuck out. It'll come out and just get hung, and so it's such a fragile part of the machine that it'll just freeze. It's sort of like your garage door opener. If you are trying to go in and out your garage door while it's going up or down, what happens to most of them? Most of them now have such a safety feature that it will stop as soon as something crosses the beam to avoid hurting someone. And so that's what happens to your cutter. It comes out and gets caught on something, so it just freezes right where it is. Well, if you don't remove these 2 covers see that and find that and fix that, then you're going to keep having trouble as well. So you want to make sure and keep your cutter bar cleaned. Sometimes it gets so worn out that a drop of oil on that cutter bar that comes out can be helpful at the mechanism moving a little bit. It'll get stuck less often. But you only need a tiny, tiny drop of oil, because if you'll look underneath here, there are components that don't need oil on them. So Rayanne says, I cleaned my machine and a small black greasy piece came out. Is this okay? It depends on what that is. If it's a small greasy piece of gunk, then yes, it's good. If it's a piece of metal or a piece of plastic, maybe not. So now we have this complete area exposed. You want to make sure that when you put things back together, you line up these 2 white dots. Most machines have them easily findable right there. But now we're going to take out the black bobbin case and we're going to sit it over here. We're going to clean that in a minute. So we're going to move the thread back out of the way. And so you want to take your little brush and clean down in here really good. Look at there. I just cleaned this machine the other day before my special Christmas projects. And look, that was just 4 days ago. So look how much dust is already down in there. So I'm going to clean that off. When I am sewing Christmas stuff, I sew almost every day. And so it's really important at least once a week to go through and clean all of these little parts. That little trough down in here, right there, is a moving part. And so you want to clean down in there really good. On the 770, 780, and the 800 machines and some other brands, you can use your thread down button to lower your needle, and it will turn this bobbin race. I'm going to turn it manually using my hand wheel over to the right so I can see the back side and clean all in here. Okay? Sometimes, I had this happen to me one time when I had my 770. I couldn't figure out what was wrong with my machine. I cleaned, I worked. Well, I finally just got really frustrated and walked away. Well, when I came back, I happened to notice a little bitty thread sticking out under here, under the bobbin race. And so I got to looking, and when I got to I turned the machine around and was looking from the back, there was a whole bunch of wadded thread up under here. So you also want to make sure while you have it cleaned that you don't have any threads getting caught down in here. Okay? So that's really all there is to cleaning that part of the machine. To clean the top thread tension guides, a lot of people will use unwaxed dental floss, but I'm just going to use these 2 threads that I have threaded here. I don't have any tension on my machine whatsoever. I'm going to put that back up to the high spot. I don't have any tension on my machine. Okay, there's no tension. So I have just 2 threads, and I'm just going to floss the machine just like you floss your teeth. We're going to pull this back through here. Some people will say you can tie these threads in a couple of little knots and pull the knots through the tension guides. And so you can do that. You can use cotton thread. Cotton thread seems to shred. I prefer to use just my regular embroidery thread to floss my machine if I don't have the dental floss. But don't use waxed. The waxed dental floss will leave a coating of wax up in here, and that will mess everything up. Okay? And so that's the easy method for cleaning your machine. So we're going to take all this thread out and move it out of our way. And now we're going to talk about oiling just a little bit. Carolina says, what happened if that little brush fell off? Well, you can buy new pieces or replace the parts. You can buy, I think you can buy just the brushes, or you can replace the parts. Before we move to oiling, I forgot about the bobbin case. So the bobbin case is probably the source of half or more of the shredding and looping issues that people report and have trouble with. This little hook, this little fish hook on the end, is what grabs the thread. As the bobbin race turns, the case, this black case stays still, but that needle goes down and grabs the thread that is moving through here, okay? And so if something happens and your needle gets pulled sideways, see how easy it is to pull that needle? If something stretches on your thread, it'll move your needle over and it'll pop right here on part of this black bobbin case. It might hit over here, it might hit over here, but if there's any kind of rough spot on this bobbin case at all, you will not stitch well. Your stitch quality significantly drops. And yes, the video will be stored in announcements at the top of the page, so anybody can view it later. So if you have any rough spots, divots, scratches, anything on this black bobbin case, it needs replacing. You can try using an emery board or a fingernail file and gently sand it down, but sometimes that'll work and get you by till you can finish a project, but it isn't ideal, to be honest. You want to replace it. Sewing parts online is the best place to find the exact part, but sometimes they're a little pricier than other sources like Amazon or Ken's Sewing Center. So always check around and look. Find the part you need on Sewing Parts Online, and then go price check other places that you might want to shop before you buy one, because they can be various prices. You just want to make sure you get the right part number. Always check your manual if you are unsure about your part number, okay? Next, you want to take a business card or some sharp, stiffer piece of paper. I'm going to use this needle package. It's empty. It'll bend all up. But I like to use the end of this because it works perfectly down in here. I just slide it down in here and work it back and forth in between all these little sections in the bobbin case, and that'll pull your thread out. I like this stiffness because it's lightweight. It's not as stiff as a business card, and printed at home business cards often have rough edges that leave dust and paper shards down in your bobbin, so don't do that. So if you want to adjust your bobbin tension for some reason, always know exactly why you're adjusting bobbin tension or upper thread tension. We're going to talk more about that in a little bit, but never adjust a tension as part of troubleshooting. Tension should be adjusted before a project begins, not during the middle of a project, okay? So we're going to talk about that in great deal. So I'm not going to take the time to put this completely back together because I'm going to show you how to oil. But this goes in first. When you're putting your items back together, the bobbin case goes back in, and then your plastic goes back in. And yes, they're not installed because I'm going to show you where to oil now. Okay? All right. So most of the PE manuals say do not oil. It's because these are home machines for home use for hobbyists. They're not designed for people like many of us who do this kind of work every single day or nearly every day. And so because the PE machines are designed as an occasional use machine, once a year or every other year service and maintenance and oiling is typically sufficient. But for many of us, we do this every day, either as a hobby or as a business. I do it for stress relief and to keep in touch with my grandbabies who are spread all over the country. And so for me, it's a great form of therapy and stress relief. I just enjoy stitching. So when I lived in Alaska, I also did not have access to any authorized brother dealer. So I had to learn how to do this on my own. So other group members, other groups have taught lots of us how to do a lot of the maintenance we do on our machines. And so we also know if We also know that some of you don't live near brother dealers, and so you want to make sure that you can do whatever maintenance that your machine needs. Okay, so the machines are typically greased with a grease, a mechanical type lubricant. So if you choose to oil your machine, you want to make sure you're using sewing machine oil because it's more compatible than any other kinds of oil. Okay, Carolina, we're going to talk about more tension in just a little bit when we troubleshoot. Okay. So I used to have a bottle of machine oil that had this cool little straw-like thing on the end, a little flexible straw. It was awesome because then I could take and point and put the drop exactly where I wanted it. This little point is hard to get where I want. But basically there's 2 machine places to oil, and like I said before, you can oil the cutter if you can time it right and put it on the moving part, not the cover. So you would press your button, drop while it's out. It's kind of a timing issue. The other thing you can do is manually pull your cutter out. Take your tweezers. It has a little lip on the end. You can pull that out, dot your oil there, and then push it back. That can be done as well. So this trough down in the bobbin race gets 1 drop of oil. 1 drop is literally 1 drop. You don't squeeze and squirt. 1 tiny little drop is all that goes in there. Okay, that's all it takes. And I'm not going to try to do this one up here because it's very difficult to get to. But we're going to turn this around a little bit more. This spot here is a good place to oil. On the 770, this spot, there's also a needle bar. I don't know if you can see it. You maybe back in here. Oops, my light and my camera are interfering with each other. Right in here on the 770, can you see where I'm pointing right there? That is the needle bar, and see how it goes up and down? That's the best place to put a drop of oil on that, on the 770 or the 800, 780 machines. On this machine, I can actually get to this spot easier than I can get to this one. So what you could do, if you have a machine where you can't quite get to this square support, you can put a drop of oil on this brush and then take the brush and put it right back there. Because that's the best place to put it. That's the needle bar, and that's going to be moving constantly every time you move. If you get thread stuck back in this part, like I mentioned earlier, you definitely want to oil this spot to get that thread lubricated. Otherwise, it's going to eventually cause some friction and injury in your machine. So if you get thread, dang it. If you get thread caught back in here, you want to put some oil on that after you get all that you can removed. All right. Any questions so far? I'm going to undo my camera from this thing so I can look at the questions. So I've caught most of them, I think. We're going to talk about tension and troubleshooting next. Yes, Dolly, your machine is almost identical to my 1400. And Jerry, yes. Vanessa, yes. The video will be pinned to the announcements at the top of the group page for you to watch anytime in the future. It will stay there forever. Okay? All right. So, let me see if I can put this back together so I can show you how to test if your bobbin tension is right. There is a method to the madness. Okay. Back up in here. I'm going to need both hands to do this. Okay. So my brother taught me how to do this. So I hope I get it right. Well, I thought I had scissors laying here. Oh, here they are. Hid them from myself. Okay. So with your bobbin case threaded, okay, with your bobbin case threaded, you should be able to hold your thread and gently shake it a little bit, let it fall. If it falls all the way into your hand, the tension is way too loose. If the bobbin falls out of the case, there is no tension at all, okay? If it doesn't move at all, the tension is probably too tight, okay? And you can Google videos on bobbin fall test and stuff like that. Let me put this in the right way. It goes this way and then this way. And so see how it just falls with just a little bit of tweaking. But if that doesn't make the bobbin fall, then your tension's not right. It should fall just a little, but it shouldn't fall all the way freely into your hand. Make sense? Oops. You want to make sure it comes out. The thread comes off in a P shape, not a Q shape. Follow the picture that's embossed on your plastic cover, okay? Connie says the 770 will have 2 covers to take off. Exactly this way. It'll have 2 up here that covers 1 and 2, 3 and 4, and then 2 that covers the bottom. That's the structure is the same, identical to this machine. Okay, so one last time. We've got our bobbin case threaded and we drop and see how it just easily falls. That is adequate tension. If yours is not like that, then you may need to adjust your bobbin tension. Number 1 rule, before you adjust any tension, make sure you have the right supplies. If you are using 40 weight embroidery thread in your bobbin tension will not be like that. It will not work. Your bobbin case is calibrated for 90 weight thread. And yes, many people will say they use 60 weight thread all the time, or they always use the same color bobbin as embroidery thread. And you can do it as long as the machine will let you. But if you're having trouble with that, then that's probably not the best choice. So always before you start adjusting tension, go back to supplies and threads and make sure you have exactly what your manual says. The PE machines are calibrated for 90 weight bobbin thread. It's different from 60 weight, and it's definitely different from the 40 weight embroidery thread that we use. Let's see if it's hard in a video to see much difference, but I'm going to try to show you a little difference here. So if you compare, and you can do this better with your threads than you can mine, but if you'll look, the embroidery thread is quite a bit different than your bobbin thread. And so it's a different weight and it pulls differently in the mechanisms on the machine. Okay? So that should help with bobbin tension. Now, let's talk a little bit about upper thread tension. The 770 and similar machines have upper thread tension. Even the combo machines will have tension settings that you can adjust in your touchscreen. So if you'll touch the paper icon and then your arrows over, you can find your embroidery tension. I'm not sure y'all can see that well, but I urge you to get to your machines and to do this. You can go down as low as -8, which is the loosest tension. You can go up to +8, which is the tightest tension. 0, 0 is default, and for almost all the projects you do, 00 should be fine. Okay? The only time you would change this number is if you are doing something really thick. If you're doing pot holders, jackets, scuba type knits, some of those thick projects, then you might need to go down. And that's why mine was on -4. If you could see that when I pulled it up, my tension was on -4 because I was stitching quilted stuff the other day and it was really thick. So I wanted my thread to not be stretched between all that thickness. And so I reduced the tension to cover correctly, and I usually stitch on about -1 or 2. So we're going to put it back there because I usually have extra layers of stabilizer on most of my projects. But use your paper icon and your over arrows to find your thread counts. You don't have some of this on your 770, but play in your screen to find out what you do have. You do have a needle up down position. You do have an opening screen position. You do have a conversion from inch to millimeters. You can do that on your machine. You cannot adjust your embroidery height, I don't think, on the 770. I don't remember that one. But your tension is in these screens as well. And so you can put your thread colors, or you can do name of color, or Madeira. Like, you can choose all sorts of colors. I can adjust my speed. You can adjust from 350 to 600 or 650. But that speed adjustment is also in this screen as well. I usually stitch about 600 most of the time. But all of that is in your paper icon. So, I hope that helps with the tension. But now we're going to talk a little bit more about troubleshooting. Let me check on questions right quick. Okay, Carolina, did that answer your question about the tension? We typically don't adjust for projects unless they're specific ones that are really thick. I stitch towels anywhere from -3 to -5, depending on what the design is that I'm stitching and how thick the towel is. I stitch t-shirts at 00 to -2, depending on how thick the design is going to be or what kinds of fabrics I'm going to add. If I'm using multiple layers of vinyl, then I might do -2, okay? Lois says she uses pre-wounds and you need to unwind. Yes, some machines are more picky about that. So yes, if you find that unwinding some of your pre-wound, 8 or 10 yards off of there can be quite helpful. All right, so first of all, I want to remind you that you have a manual that comes with your machine, and almost all machine manuals actually come with its own troubleshooting guide. So if you'll turn to the back of your manual, you'll see a page that looks like this, and it will tell you all sorts of possible solutions and how to fix it. So it'll tell you if it can't if it can't thread the needle. Number one cause is needle is not in the correct position. Usually it's not far enough up. I have to take my fingernail and push up to be able to install my needle correctly. If you don't have a fingernail, use the flat edge of your screwdriver to push it all the way up. Hand tighten and then screw in with your screwdriver. Always use a screwdriver when you are tightening your needle. Otherwise it'll bounce out with the stitching, with the bouncing of the machine. Okay? So always check your manual for troubleshooting help. They already know what's going to happen and how to fix most of the stuff on your machine. So always check that. Check supplies, like I said before. Make sure you're using proper stabilizer, that your stabilizer isn't floppy around in your hoop. When stabilizer can flop around in the hoop, your needle and your threads are also going to bounce around and not be secure and quality when you're done. Do you ever use air spray to blow out dust out of machine? I do, but a lot of people say don't. So it's sort of a personal preference. Some machine dealers and some quilting store personnel will say you'll push the threads further back in the machine. Well, there's really not anywhere else that's going to move. This is your moving part right here. Just keep that in mind, that it's a personal choice. Some machine manuals will say use it, and some machine manuals will say don't. Okay. All right. If you have other questions, go ahead and type them in and I'll try to catch them. Tammy wants to know the easiest way to find the beginning of your thread. I know you're going to laugh at me, but I blow on it. I take it out of the case and I blow or I rub until I find it. Just back and forth until it comes off. Either blowing or rubbing on it till it pops right off. Okay? If you change your bobbin thread or replace your bobbin in the midst of a sewing project, it's very possible that threads will not be seated correctly. Remove your hoop from the machine if necessary and rethread from the beginning. Rethread the top thread and rethread the bobbin thread. Almost always when that happens, you're going to have stitch problems if the bobbin thread or the upper thread comes out of position for whatever reason. So always go back and thread from the beginning. I have recently stopped cutting the top thread when I change my bobbin. I release the tension, I raise the presser foot and push my hoop to behind my machine and let it sit on the back of the table. And then I open this up, change my bobbin, put it back, and then slide it back, and then gently, without tension, pull my thread back up to the top, lower the foot, put the tension on the thread, and then it stitches right, and I don't have to worry about disconnecting my threads or reversing stitching or whatever like that to secure it. If you're still cutting and replacing all of that, that's fine, but make sure you reverse a few stitches over where you begin to secure those stitches. Otherwise, it's going to come unraveled over time. The other thing I do is when I'm done with that particular project, I usually go back and put a dot of fabric glue like Fray Check on the back of the design to help secure that particular spot that isn't secured with repeated stitching. There's no knots. One thing that a lot of people have trouble with is trying to figure out the right needles to use. For embroidery, you want to use embroidery needles. You don't want to use universal needles. You don't want to use sewing needles. Some embroidery needles are marked sharp and ballpoint, but all of them are not. So if it's labeled sharp needle, it's probably a sewing needle. It's not an embroidery needle. So be sure you check the right kind of needle that you're getting. The reason is embroidery needles have a larger eye for the thread to be able to have more room to bounce around in at the speeds we're sewing. Okay, so that's really important. I will say this about quality threads versus cheap threads, and I'm not really going to talk about brands, but I'm going to tell you that the cheaper threads are not as high quality and often tend to result in difficult stitching, more troubleshooting, more shredding, more problems. So it's not the truth always, but for some machines and some cheaper brands of threads, you're going to get what you pay for. And so be careful picking the threads to use. So I'm going to stop and read questions for a second. Michelle says, I read some people say you should replace your needle for each project. To be honest, I replace my needle when they break or when I'm having loops. I typically use a needle until it's used up. In fact, I just noticed the last project I was working on, I think I'm out of needles. I think I have 2 or 3 needles left out of my stash, so I need to order some more. But I usually order the 100 packs from Oregon online, and so I'm running out of needles. Can the internal thread cutter be replaced? Mine no longer cuts. Yes, you can replace it. Go to Sewing Parts Online, Patricia, and you'll be able to find the part there. And I don't know if you can replace it. I don't know if you have the technical skill or if you're, just afraid to do that, but some people will do that at home. So you could try to do that. Should I still use embroidery needles while embroidering leather? So when you're doing the thicker items, you do need to slow the machine down, and you do need to use leather needles. And you have to babysit those items. There's just no way to walk away from doing something that thick. Sometimes when I'm doing really thick stuff like eyes, a lot of times when I'm doing characters, eyes get really dense because they have the white, they have the black, they have the colors. All the stuff in an eye design adds a lot of detail and beauty to your project. But all of that extra dense stitching inside such a tiny space often will cause shredding. So sometimes I will sit here and start my machine and do just 3 or 4 stitches at a time rather than going and trying to slow my machine down even more. I just literally stitch, almost like turning the hand wheel, only I'm using the button to start it for a few stitches and stop it for a few stitches and start it for a few stitches and stop it for a few stitches. And so that can be really helpful when you're doing just a tiny portion that's really dense. Let's see what else. Lois, do you put the thread bobbin in clockwise? You follow the picture on your machine. You follow this picture on your machine. Okay? The bobbin should come off and come around and connect through the bobbin case. Okay? Follow the picture on your machine. All right. I will say this about threads, going back to the brands of threads. Some brands or some machines like certain brands, according to some people. I know when I had my 770 would use sulky, okay, but it did not like using Madeira at all. I don't know why. I would use it sometimes, but it would always cause trouble. It would loop or it would shred. Like, I don't ever know. I never could figure out what would make it do what. But in the 7 years I had my 770, it preferred sulky and thread for the most part until I found Robinson Anton. Once I found Robinson Anton, I didn't have to use Sewer's Aid with any of my threads anymore. And at the time I had a 770 and a Futura Singer XL400. And the only thread that I could use in both machines without any trouble was the Robinson Anton. Yes, it's a little bit pricier, but again, it's one of those things where you get what you pay for. And so if you're having tons of trouble shredding, then maybe it's time to try a different brand. But I'm not saying one brand is bad or one brand is good. I'm saying try different brands for your machine and find what works for you, your personality, and your machine's personality, because they're all different. If you are struggling with thread you have and you're determined to use the thread you have, that's fine. But be willing to adjust your tension to account for that cheaper thread. The cheaper threads do much better on lower tensions because there's not anything pulling on the thread as tight. The other thing to keep in mind is this spool cap that comes with your machine accessory kit. I don't use them. I've never, well, I did use them in the beginning, but I found out real quick that thread gets caught on here and it shreds and breaks my needles. So I quit using a thread spool. For a while, I tried using the mug on my table in front of my machine. I have a thread stand. I've used it in the back. I found that nothing works better than just letting the thread sit here and come off the spool freely. Just let it happen. Let the machine pull through, and it causes less trouble. Making sure I've covered all my notes. Keep in mind that some of these parts are a little fragile. You don't want to force or push anything significantly hard. Use very little pressure. One of the other big problems that people have is this little, and this is going to be really hard to show you on the video, but it's this little bitty flexible piece of metal at number 6. There's a little tiny flexible piece of metal, and the needle is supposed to go through that. There's a hole in that little flexible piece, and then it comes around sort of in a C or a hook shape to kind of keep the needle, to keep the thread in line with the needles up and down. And so when you unscrew the needle, unscrew the screw that holds the needle in place, that little metal piece is movable, but it's right there, and if you wiggle it, you can see. I don't know if y'all can see because the camera's way back there, but you can look at this on your machine, and then we have pictures all in the group that's used a dental mirror, so you can see the upside down picture of this. But if that little flexible needle holder thing gets out of alignment, your thread will shred. And so always double check and make sure that that little flexible part is between this bar and this bar. Okay, it should sit right there above the needle. Okay. That's probably the most common cause of needle shredding. That's not involved with the threading of the machine. Okay. Let's see here. What else have we got? Any other questions? Let me check for questions. Having problems putting my hoop on my embroidery machine. Yep. Estelle, I would suggest you go ahead and order the off-brand from Amazon. It's a 4-pack. It'll come with another 5x7, another 4x4, a little oval one, and a repositional 5x12 hoop. Those attach much easier and much better. If you have to use what you have, then figure out if it likes to be snapped on front first or back first, and stand up and put the pressure directly down over either front or back, figuring out which way it works best. But the hoop that comes with the 770 and similar machines is often very difficult to attach for a while. A wonder clip under my thread. It elevates a tad and haven't had an issue since. Yep, some people will do all sorts of tricks. Michelle, can you please go over needle size again? Use your manual. Your manual should tell you the needle to use, but we always recommend embroidery needles, not sewing or universal needles. Any other questions? If you have not learned where things are in your touchscreen, play with it. Like, that's the only way you're going to learn where to adjust tension. If you haven't removed covers for cleaning, you want to do that pretty regularly. You just take and just brush off all these things very carefully, very softly. Any place there's dust, you want to get rid of the dust. Dust bunnies are bad. They interfere with quality stitching and movements of the moving parts. Let's see what else y'all are saying. Thread is not threading, but I'm getting some looping. Yep, it's probably a sign that you need a new needle or that you need a new bobbin case. Looping threads is almost always from a dull needle. Maybe it got bent, maybe it jammed, maybe you had a thread snag or something. If thread gets caught or snagged on some of this upper part of your machine, it'll snag and it'll pull that needle right out of alignment. Real easy to push it over, okay? And once the needle hits this black bobbin case, it'll be ruined. You can try sanding it out, but it doesn't always work. So go ahead. I keep one on hand most of the time. So I always, because if I'm stitching and on a deadline to send something to my grandkids and have to wait 3 or 4 days to get a bobbin case, I could be way behind and my grandkids mad at me, and that won't work. So I usually keep a black bobbin case on hand so that I can just keep stitching. Rethread, rethread, rethread. That's the best advice I can give you. I will show you how to thread your machine to make sure it works properly. You want to go through 1 and 2 and around through the tension discs with the foot raised. Okay, with all of that, you want to go through all of that with it up, and then once you're down here, after going through 4, after you're done with 1, 2, 3, and 4, drop your presser foot. That's when you want tension on the thread. You should be able to feel a difference. Raise the presser foot, thread just pulls right off. Lower the presser foot, it should be tight. And you should feel the tension. If that is not happening, your thread didn't go through the tension discs properly, it's time to take it out and rethread it. But I thread 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I lower my presser foot. And that way I can put a little tension on it to wrap it through 6 and through the thread cutter, and then put it through the needle. Okay? 1 through 5 with the foot up. And then before you go through 6, drop the presser foot and put some pressure on the thread. Okay? As long as, Lee Allen, as long as the bobbin case is the right part number, it should work just fine. Yes, you can get the black bobbin case Carolina on many sites. You can get it from lots of different places, but always double check. I always double check the part number and specifications using Sewing Parts Online, because it is very specific to machines, and Amazon is not always trustworthy. They just want to sell you a product, and so they often will list machines that it does not fit. So check your part on Sewing Parts Online and then shop for that part wherever else you want to shop. What else, y'all? That is most of the troubleshooting information that I can think of, and it's most of my notes. I have one last thing we're going to talk about. Okay, I don't see any more questions, so this is the last thing we're going to talk about. So in your touch screen, there are 2 tension settings. One of them is the 00 major default tension. It's just 00. You get tighter tension if you go to positive numbers. You get looser tension if you go to negative numbers. In general, that's the only tension adjustment I ever really make. I don't adjust my bobbin tension. I don't adjust the fine tuning tension. But there is a second tension setting inside the touch screen, and we call it typically the fine tuning. 4.0 is default, and so if you go to your adjust screen, like I can't do it on my machine, I don't think. Let's see. If you'll go to your adjust screen in the bottom right corner after you load your design, you'll see that there are some other settings in there, and you can scroll over to get to the fine tuning tension. You can also get to your cutter on off screen in that setting. So you just want to play with it. Yeah, I don't have that setting. Yeah, I don't have it in mine. So you'll just have to get in your 770 touch screen and play with it. But in the bottom right corner will be a button, an icon called Adjust. And if you'll go to that, you'll see several different settings. Okay. The default for the fine tuning tension is 4.0. It's sort of like a microscope. Have you ever used a microscope? Do you remember using a microscope in high school or college? You could adjust the viewing on a larger scale with one dial, and with finer tuning you could get better focused using the tinier dial, the smaller dial. And so that's the same as with your machine. You have a general tension, which is 0, default, and then you have fine tuning tension, which is 4.0 by default. So you can adjust either one, but I've never adjusted the fine tuning tension. Some people only ever adjust the fine tuning. They leave their default at 0 and they only adjust the fine tuning. So it doesn't matter which one you use. Just keep in mind that if you adjust your fine tuning tension, it will stay at that number forever until you change it. And so if you change default general tension from 0 to 1 plus, then the next time you turn on your machine, it's going to go to 0. It will not stay put. So it depends on what you find useful for your machine and how you find your stitch outs look when you're done. But there are two types of tension, and so you need to be aware of that. There are people that are going to come along and say, I've never touched my tension and my machine, so it's fine. And that's fine. That's great. You got a great machine. But if you're having trouble with thread shredding, if you're having trouble with coverage, you want to think about that tension might be part of the problem. Okay. Just remember that adjusting tension is never part of troubleshooting. It is part of project planning. Okay. That's a major thing to grasp. Adjusting tension is never part of troubleshooting. It is part of project planning. You only should adjust your tension at the very beginning of a project based on your design elements, your density, your thickness of fabrics, excuse me, and not once you start having trouble with your stitch outs. Does that make sense? All right, any other questions? I don't see anything else posted here. We've chatted for about an hour, which is about what I had intended. So I hope this is helpful. This video will replace the current troubleshooting video, and I will keep deleting comments that we answer over time that aren't useful to the thread, so that the thread can stay clean and usable by lots of folks. I will put some links and stuff to sewing parts online, to some of the other stuff that's in the current troubleshooting post. I'll move some of that over sometime today or tomorrow, but we'll build this as our new troubleshooting and cleaning post. I hope it's been helpful. Y'all have a great day. Love y'all.